Synopsis of the Books of the Bible. 1 Timothy. By JND Darby. New Testament. 1 Timothy. Introduction. The epistles to Timothy and Titus have naturally a peculiar bearing and character, being addressed to persons deputed by the apostle to act in his name or to care for the churches during his absence. Their application to us is nonetheless direct on this account, because they not only instruct us with regard to the state of the church, and the pastoral care which the apostle bestowed on it, but the line of conduct in which Timothy is charged to lead the faithful is that which the faithful ought always themselves to follow. Nevertheless, to confound the directions given to Timothy and Titus with the words addressed immediately to the faithful, would be to cast confusion upon ministry in its best sense. A great part of this first epistle to Timothy requires but little development, not because it is without importance, but because it contains directions, so plain and simple that explanation would be superfluous, and practical exhortations which would only be obscured and their force and point taken away by attempting to enlarge upon them. On the other hand, some general principles of great importance for the position of the assembly, in general, are contained in this epistle. God assumes here, in a peculiar way, the character of a Saviour God with regard to the world, a principle of great importance in all that concerns our conversation in the world and our intercourse with men. We represent in our religious character a God of love. This was not the case in Judaism. He was indeed the same God, but there he took the character of a lawgiver. All were indeed to come to his temple according to the declaration of the prophets, and his temple was open to them, but he did not characterize himself as a Saviour God for all. In Titus, we find the same expression. In these confidential communications to his dear children in the faith and companions in the work, we can understand that the apostle would clearly establish the great principles on which the administration committed to him rested. That all men were the objects of God's dealings in grace was the general basis on which this administration was founded, that the character of God towards the world was that of a Saviour, compare 2 Corinthians 5. The law has its place and it still has its, as the apostle shows, the conviction of unrighteous men. See note. But the sovereign mercy of God was the starting point of all that the apostle had to declare. This thought, this spirit, was to govern the worship even of believers. Details follow. Notwithstanding this love to the world, there was upon the earth an assembly of the living God, the pillar and support of the truth, and the witness to it on earth. The person of Christ and all that concerns him is the subject of its confession, the foundation of its existence, and the object of its faith. This faith would be assailed in the last days by the enemy, who, under the pretense of sanctity, would set himself up against God the Creator and Preserver of all men and of believers in particular. Directions for the walk of the assembly compose the remainder of the epistle. Conduct suitable to all is set before Timothy to make him, as well as ourselves, understand that which befits the assembly of God. We will now look more closely into the contents of this epistle. Note. Not here, especially, that anyone is under it, or that it is a rule of life for a people of God, but a rule of right and wrong to demonstrate evil to any conscience. In verse 5 we have the end of the commission of the gospel, on the other hand, partaking of the divine nature, love and holiness, acting up to responsibility, a good conscience and the heart fully devoted to God, receiving his word and trusting him, end of note.